Now 1 hour and 5 minutes from this afternoon's instantaneous launch opportunity at 3:21 p.m. Eastern Time or 1921 UTC. You're continuing to watch live views of Space Launch Complex 40 over at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station, about 4 miles away from our camera position here at the Kennedy Space Center. You can see it is a hot day. Heat waves are in full display here as the Falcon 9 is vertical on pad 40, 4 miles distant. This mission is designated Starlink 4-27. It's carrying 53 Starlink satellites into orbit for SpaceX's privately funded internet network to provide consumer-grade broadband services around the world. This will be the 37th launch of a SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket this year, and the 36th orbital space launch attempt from Cape Canaveral or the Kennedy Space Center this year. The lion's share of those launches have been conducted by SpaceX in 2022. Everything is on schedule right now for an on-time launch at 3:21 p.m. Eastern Time. The most recent official launch weather outlook that we've received from the 45th Weather Squadron, which is part of the Space Force's Space Launch Delta 45 here at the Cape, indicated a 50% probability of favorable weather, 50-50 odds for go or no-go weather for this afternoon's launch. However, the weather conditions currently are favorable for launch, an hour and 3 minutes away from liftoff time. We'll see how those trends evolve over the next 63 minutes. But right now, everything is go for launch weather-wise, and as far as we can tell from a technical standpoint. And we'll be monitoring the countdown throughout the next hour and few minutes. The next major milestone in the countdown will be the start of propellant loading. That is scheduled to begin at T-minus 35 minutes with the start of loading kerosene and liquid oxygen into the first stage of the Falcon 9. Also at T-minus 35 minutes, at the same time as the start of prop load, the automated countdown sequencer will take control of the countdown. And at that point, the members of the SpaceX launch team will be in a monitor mode to oversee the operation run by the computer in the final 35 minutes before liftoff. The Falcon 9 out on pad 40 stands 229 feet or 70 meters tall. It is powered by 9 Merlin 1D engines on the first stage. There is a single Merlin engine on the second stage. And SpaceX plans to recover the reusable booster stage on a drone ship northeast of Cape Canaveral. About 9 minutes after launch is when we expect to see that first stage make its vertical landing on the landing barge east of Charleston, South Carolina, or about 400 miles northeast of the Cape. While we wait for the launch, we ask that you please like our stream if you haven't already. This helps us gain a larger audience and a larger reach for our launch coverage, so we really appreciate it if you just click that like button under our video stream. That really helps us out. We just passed T-minus 1 hour, now inside 60 minutes until liftoff this afternoon of SpaceX's Falcon 9 rocket from Pad 40 at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. You're continuing to watch a live view of the Falcon 9 as it awaits its launch opportunity this afternoon. Now approaching T-minus 56 minutes and counting. The 53 Starlink satellites for today's launch are flat packed inside the payload shroud of the Falcon 9. That's the bulbous, bullet-shaped component of the rocket at the very top of the Falcon 9. Inside that aeroshell are these 53 Starlink satellites, which were built by SpaceX on an assembly line factory in Redmond, Washington, near Seattle. And with these 53 satellites, SpaceX will surpass the 3,100 satellite launched milestone. 3,055 satellites have been launched to date, 53 more going to space this afternoon. By large measure, by nearly an order of magnitude, SpaceX has the largest operating satellite fleet in orbit today. SpaceX's countdown is now at the T-minus 45-minute point. The countdown is about 10 minutes away from the expected time that the propellants will begin loading into the Falcon 9 rocket out at Space Launch Complex 40. The propellant loading poll of SpaceX's launch team is currently underway. This is an electronic poll, so you won't be hearing the go, no-go calls from every member of the launch team. This is done electronically by SpaceX, but we do expect to hear a call from the SpaceX launch team sometime shortly before the T-minus 35-minute mark to confirm whether the poll was go or no-go for entering that terminal countdown sequence. The final 35 minutes of the countdown are governed by an automated sequencer. This is a computer-controlled countdown beginning at T-minus 35 minutes. And at the same time as that sequencer begins its work, propellant will begin loading into the Falcon 9 for this afternoon's launch. Liftoff remains scheduled for 3:21 p.m. Eastern Time. That is 19:21 UTC. This mission will be carrying 53 Starlink Internet satellites into orbit. Now T-minus 41 minutes and 42 seconds. Less than 7 minutes from the time that the countdown sequence will begin to pick up the pace of activity with the start of propellant loading. That is scheduled to begin at T-minus 35 minutes. Weather conditions here on Florida's Space Coast continue to look favorable for a launch this afternoon, despite some iffiness and some uncertainty in the forecast going into today. There was a forecast for some thunderstorm activity around the Cape Canaveral area this afternoon, but so far those storms have held off. SpaceX's countdown now passing the T-minus 40-minute mark, 5 minutes to go until the start of propellant loading. We'll be listening in for that call in the next few minutes. But until then, I want to show you what these Starlink satellites look like as they're in launch configuration. The picture on the left of your screen is a file photo provided by SpaceX from a previous Starlink launch last year. This shows a stack of Starlink satellites being readied for encapsulation inside the Falcon 9's payload fairing. One half of that payload shroud is seen here behind the satellites, moving around them for encapsulation inside a clean room. So this stack of satellites is very representative of what is on board today's mission, ready for launch in a little more than 39 minutes. Each of these satellites is stacked one on top of the other inside the payload fairing, and together the 53 satellites pretty much max out the Falcon 9's volume and mass capability for its ability to carry payload into orbit. It fills much of the payload fairing and pretty much maxes out the lift capacity in terms of mass for the Falcon 9 rocket. This slide shows some of the key features and stats on the Starlink satellites. There are 53 on board today's mission. Each satellite weighs between 250 and 300 kilograms. And each spacecraft, after deploying from the Falcon 9, will unfurl solar panels to begin charging their batteries. And then after a period of checkouts, they'll activate ion propulsion systems that are fed by krypton gas in combination with electrical power to accelerate that krypton gas through the thruster system to generate an impulse of energy. And that ion propulsion system allows the satellites to actually climb from their drop-off altitude, which is between 150 and 200 miles approximately above Earth, up to an operational orbit at 335 miles or 540 kilometers. These satellites are built on an assembly line that SpaceX has developed at its Starlink factory in Redmond, Washington. This is what a Starlink user terminal looks like. So Starlink consumers can purchase this terminal and then pay a monthly fee for consumer-grade broadband service provided through the Starlink satellites. This terminal, this antenna, actually points to the sky and will receive internet signals from the Starlink satellites as they pass overhead. The satellites on today's mission are heading to an inclination of 53.2 degrees. This is also known as shell number 4 in the Starlink constellation. There are 5 Starlink orbital shells or layers at all at an altitude of roughly 535 to 550 kilometers in that range of altitude, but at different inclinations at 53.0 and 53.2 degrees. Those are mid-inclination orbits. And then there are also inclinations at 70 degrees and then 2 distinct That's the call out from SpaceX's launch team that the team pulled go.
Net. Launch control will abort the launch auto sequence and immediately proceed into launch abort. At T-minus 10 seconds, launch control will be hands off, relying on automated abort criteria for the remainder of the count.
Now approaching T-minus 36 minutes, so we did hear from SpaceX Launch Control that the team is go for propellant loading, and launch. That propellant loading is set to begin at T-minus 35 minutes. Liftoff remains set for 3:21 p.m. Eastern Time or 19:21 UTC. Just to wrap up what I was talking about a second ago, there are 5 layers, 5 shells in the Starlink network. This mission is going to shell number 4. 2 of these shells are at mid-inclination orbits at 53 and 53.2 degrees. And then there are 2 shells in polar orbit at about 97.5 degree inclination. Those launch out of Vandenberg Space Force Base in California. And then there's another shell known as shell number 2 at a 70 degree inclination orbit. There's only been 1 launch into that shell so far. Right now, SpaceX is focusing on mid-inclination and polar orbits for the Starlink deployments. T-minus 33 minutes and counting. We expected to hear the call from SpaceX's launch team a couple of minutes ago to confirm the start of propellant loading. We didn't hear that call out, but just a few moments before then, we did hear that the team was go for propellant loading. So we do expect that started on time, but we'll stand by for confirmation of that milestone. Now passing T-minus 32 minutes. Again, if you're just joining us, you're looking at a live view of Space Launch Complex 40, where the Falcon 9 rocket is set for liftoff at 3:21 p.m. Eastern Time, or 1921 UTC, carrying the next batch of SpaceX's Starlink Internet satellites into space. If you're just joining us, I'm Stephen Clark, editor of SpaceflightNow.com, and I'm reporting live from the Kennedy Space Center, just a few miles away from the Falcon 9 launch pad. The view you're seeing now is from my position at the Kennedy Space Center press site. It is a hot afternoon here in Florida, evident by the heat waves between us and the launch pad. But right now, weather appears favorable for liftoff at 3:21 p.m. Eastern. If you haven't had a chance yet, we ask that you please like our stream. You can click the like button, and that really helps us gain a bigger audience and extend our following and extend our reach for our launch coverage. Also, you're invited to become a member of our YouTube channel. If you join at one of the various membership levels, you'll be supporting our coverage, helping us bring you coverage like you're getting today of this Starlink mission, as well as future flights coming up in the next few days and weeks. Depending on which membership level you choose, you will gain access to exclusive video features from our perch here at the Kennedy Space Center. We have wonderful access to a lot of the launch operations here in Florida, and we're trying to bring that to you as much as we can. Now a half hour until liftoff at 3:21 p.m. Eastern Time, or 1921 UTC. You can also contribute to us through the Super Chat function here on YouTube. And if you do that, we do appreciate your support. We just received an update from SpaceX that the weather conditions have indeed improved. As I mentioned, weather is trending in the right direction, and we just received an update from SpaceX that the forecast now shows a 70% probability of favorable weather for launch this afternoon. That's up from 50% in the previous forecast. T-minus 26 minutes and 20 seconds. The launch countdown began its automated sequence at T-minus 35 minutes. And here's an overview of that countdown timeline. Propellant loading also began at T-minus 35 minutes with kerosene and